Well, welcome to Streaming Star Wars, the live Friday night Star Wars Hangout sports radio style talk show. I'm Pete Fletzer. I'm one of the hosts. I'm also joined by my good friend Chris Ryans and Nick Milky. Gentlemen, it's Friday night. We're going to talk some Star Wars. How are we feeling?
Doing good.
Feeling good.
Yeah.
Feeling very good.
Feeling very
ready
well.
for this.
But first, before we get started, Chris, it's Nick's birthday. Well, it's not his birthday today, but we're within that 24-hour period.
Yeah.
So happy birthday.
Happy
old
belated.
guy.
You old curmudgeon.
You old so-and-so. That's right.
You old cranky bastard. Welcome to whatever year it is now. It's older than
It's like whatever.
it's older than most of the people on Twitter. That we can
That's
say.
right. As I said, I think in my TikTok bio, it says I'm too old to be here and not old enough to be anywhere else. I'm just right there, stuck in the middle.
That's Gen X, baby. We are. Yeah. There's a good contingent of like old folks like us there's like a huge like Gen X crowd that's on TikTok. I love
Really?
it. Oh
Really?
yeah.
They're not doing the dances.
The new territory.
No.
Well,
Talk about how it was like, growing up feral as a Gen X kid with doing
in the neighborhood.
Every video is an old guy going, "We didn't have this when I was a kid." And that's it.
Yeah.
It's like
Exactly.
you got
it's
riding
like
around on your bikes with your helmets on. We didn't have that.
Camera's like only half of your face because you
Right.
don't know where the camera's supposed to be pointed.
None of us should be alive. We're all almost dead from the stuff we did back in the day. You're all a bunch of softies. But
Yeah.
But speaking of social media, you can find us at ATGcast. You can find Chris at Broaxium. You can find Nick at Will's Pod. But if you want to follow the show, which we would love it if you did, speaking of old people platforms, head on over to facebook.com/streaming Star Wars. That's where we're really loading up this show. That's probably the best place to interact with us. So go hang out there, especially as Twitter turns into a dumpster fire and people are leaving. That's a good place to go. But for the most part, that's where you want to find us. Also, guys, every Friday night, one of the great things about the show is we get to hear from you. So be ready. As we get to the back half of the show, we want to hear from you about whatever we talk about tonight. We have on paper what we want to talk about, but who knows where it's going to go. But Nick, since it's your birthday, and not only that, we do it every week, why don't you hit us with a little bit of housekeeping before we get to the show?
Absolutely. Biggest housekeeping thing that we hit most every week. You already talked about Facebook. Go check out the Facebook page, facebook.com/streaming Star Wars. Everything else that we do can be found at atgcast.com. So if you go to atgcast.com, merch, t-shirts, all that good stuff. Pete's got some new designs up. I know he's got a commercial he's going to run.
Yeah.
At some point tonight, talking about merch and t-shirts and all that fun jazz. So that'll come up in a little bit. But you can also find the information about the shows that we do on ATGcast. Not only this one, but Around the Galaxy, Podcast of the Wills, the shows that Pete and I do, maybe some other shows coming in the not too distant future that we may be talking about a little bit at some point tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of good stuff there. So check that out, atgcast.com, your one-stop shop for all the things that we do that talk mostly about Star Wars. I do want to shout out our friends in the chat hanging out. I already see that we've got some regulars. I see Brian and Jeff and JD. I saw somebody else up here. I do also want to throw a shout out. Jasmine is here. Jasmine and Brian are the parents of Atticus, some friends of ours and a friend of my girls in school. Excited to have them hanging out watching with us tonight, bringing in some new people to our nonsense. So welcome. Dan is here. Dan is not fishing, even though
Not
it's the
fishing.
weekend. So,
All right.
sorry, Dan.
At the moment.
That's right. Give it time. So yeah, thanks to everybody that's hanging out in the chat. We're excited to see you. We hope you will enjoy the show. The other thing that we always do at the top of the show is we want to make a toast. And I've got two things I want to make a toast to tonight. The first one is it is Veterans Day. We certainly want to shout out all of our veterans. We are truly thankful for the service of everybody who serves in our military and all the different branches and provide the opportunities for our country to be what it is. So first, I want to raise my glass to our veterans. Cheers to all of you.
Cheers. Thank you.
And then also, and I know Chris did it on purpose, but we want to lift a sad toast tonight to Kevin Conroy. Kevin Conroy was the definitive voice of Batman to a lot of people. In the 90s, I was in high school and about to graduate, but Batman the Animated Series is truly one of the iconic Batman things that's out there.
Yeah,
for sure.
Kevin Conroy not only was a phenomenal voice for Batman, he was not only animated series, but Killing Joke and a lot of the movies, just such a consistent force. But by all reports and indications, truly a gentleman, truly a good person in the DC community, in the voice acting community. Somebody everything I've read and have seen over the last day or so since we found this sad news out is that it's just nothing but good stories. Everything is. So a loss for the world. I know he had been sick for a while, but we want to raise our glasses tonight to Kevin Conroy and to all our friends hanging out in the chat. So Sagrona.
You know who else? Who else passed away today?
Oh,
Gallagher
also
really
passed away. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Gallagher, you're right. I saw that. So
listen. Also, I'm with you guys today. This is some vodka in here, so I'm drinking with you guys. Funny.
We've pushed you over the edge, Chris. I apologize.
Come to the dark side. Come to the dark side. We have alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. We have alcohol and low moral standing. So
doesn't take much.
It's perfect. But wow, that's shocking. I mean, yeah. So will Gallagher's brother continue the comedy act? I know it's too soon to ask that. I'm sorry, Chris.
Here's what's funny about the Gallagher.
I'm an asshole, just so everybody knows. I am a complete.
Here's what's funny about the Gallagher thing. I was explaining to my kids earlier who Gallagher was.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, I've heard of that." And I was like, "Really?" And they said, "Yeah, there's a bit in one of the My Little Pony movies where there's a My Little Pony version of Gallagher doing the smashing the fruit bit there's a Gallagher My Little Pony."
That's wow.
Well, generations. I love it.
I guess it does.
So now you get to make the transition from there into our episode.
Transition from the honor of our veterans to a couple of horrible deaths, and hey, welcome to Streaming Star Wars. So I was not prepared to make a transition, so we're just going to hard cut straight in. So we're it's interesting. Again, I say it every week, and the great thing about doing a Friday night and or recap show or any of the shows that now drop on Wednesdays is that we've had a little bit more time to sort of think about it and put a little bit of, go to a different level. We don't tend to sort of recap everything. I mean, and that's the challenge with this episode number 10, which was, we're all going to say it. It was the best episode yet, right? I mean, but I think we can really say that about this one because this one had action. It was the prison break, or it was the end of the prison break arc. It had Luthen Rail's incredible monologue at the end, which just brought the whole rebellion home. But it's interesting when I think about this episode because I was fortunate enough. I didn't say anything about it last week, but last Friday I was fortunate enough to be part of a panel with a bunch of other podcasts, great podcasters, people we've known, all of us know. Lucasfilm did sort of a behind the scenes panel discussion, and so I got to speak to the production designer, the sound designer, the costume designer, and the visual effects supervisor. And as part of doing that, you can hear that show, by the way, on the ATG Cast podcast stream. You'll hear my questions.
Dropped on Wednesday. It's really good.
That's right. You'll hear questions from it, and really, if you're into the show at all, the insights that came from these guys, it just really cool stuff. I got to ask the famous ATG Cast question: "What is your favorite sound effect and why?" That was a lot of fun. But anyway, The advantage to that, among many other things, was I actually got to see episodes 9 and 10 2.5 weeks ago. And the interesting thing is, I don't think I've watched each episode so far twice. The morning it comes out, 5 in the morning before, I start life, and then usually again before the Friday night show. This episode, I watched it when I was given access. I watched it a second time, and then I've watched it twice since it dropped on Wednesday. And it's interesting because it's not that I don't want to go back and watch the Andor episodes. I really intend to go back and watch them all as a whole, but I haven't really gone back and like picked out different pieces. Corey said it last week. You can go watch the Bill Burr episode of Mandalorian, or you can go, watch, the the Mandalorian episode of Book of Boba Fett. But this show, it's kind of hard to pick out which chapter you want to go to because it's like picking up a book and trying to find that favorite
Absolutely.
section,
Absolutely.
And so this particular episode truly was probably the best, only because it fulfilled a number of promises, but it also started to go into a direction that I think is really interesting. And I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on it. I'm going to take a deep dive in a second into the Mon Mothma scene, because as great as everything else was, that's, after watching this episode 4 times, that's the part that I go back to. I go back to the climb part and the attack and all the action and Luthen's part. But man, the Mon Mothma scene really struck me. But Chris, how did this episode hit you?
Like a ton of bricks, like every episode. I've probably given you guys my, like what it looks like when I'm watching Andor every week, and it's like, it's just, and then once the credits hit up, I'm like,
right. The credits are like, okay, I can rest now. Right.
Like, listen, I had like a big drink. I had food. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna watch this. But food went cold. Like everything just like I didn't even touch it. Like during the whole thing, it was just like it just gripped me like from beginning to end. Seeing how this rebellion is coming together, and this is like I'm talking as a whole, like seeing Cassian start to be that Cassian that we know in Rogue One. He's getting there. He is very much getting there. Seeing all the theme of this episode to me was sacrifice.
100%. Yep.
With what's his name? Supervisor Young.
Lonnie.
What he's sacrificing. What of course what Luthen is sacrificing. Man, like when you get done that conversation, you gotta be like, all right, I'll stay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. It was such, of course, an intense episode, and like I said, with sacrifice when it comes to Kino, and he knew from the beginning he wasn't gonna be able to get out of there.
Yeah,
like as far as an escape goes, he knew. Yep. There's no other way. There's no other way out. There's no hangar really, like with a whole bunch of ships. There's no other way out of there.
Right.
And that's just
right. Unless they were rescued, that was the only way he was going to get out. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, let me throw a question to you, Nick, because you mentioned Luthen, Chris, and Nick. You and I talked a little bit about that. Luthen's sacrifice, right, is huge, and it's the big, mic drop at the end of this episode.
Yes.
But again, watching it 4 times, by the 4th time I got to it, I wasn't looking at him as a hero as much. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a really good question, and it's one of those ones I've seen it. I didn't have the privilege of the early watch, but just since Wednesday, I've watched the episode twice fully. But then I've also gone back and I pulled up Kino's speech and I pull up Luthen's speech, and then I knew what you wanted to talk about with Mon Mothma, so I went and rewatched that part of that conversation. But that's the thing with Luthen. Like, he talks about being, not being happy, but we have the scene at the end of the Aldhani heist when he walks into the back room by himself and he starts laughing. And of course there could be, the psychology of this is somebody who is sacrificed and he finally has something that went his way. So it's just an emotional release. It's we've all had those moments. I like that idea. And I think that Luthen does also still fall into that. Do we can we completely trust Luthen at this point? Because Luthen's playing a game and he's committed to the game. And I'll be honest, that speech is powerful. And I texted it to you and Scotty, I think, earlier that Wednesday afternoon. In fact, I've got it pulled up on my phone because it's so good that, I mean, just the lines in it. What is it? You know, what is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn, and this is what I love. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise I know I'll never see. Like,
right.
It hits so hard, but you're right. There's that little tiny part of you. This is a man who wears masks. He wears a wig. He wears, you know, and where does it play?
Again, not a single frame is wasted in this show. And every shot is framed perfectly. When the door opens, Luthen looks like a villain. He's got the black flowing cape, right?
He's just far enough back.
Right. I mean, we knew it was him, of course, but it was just like, wow, he struck a figure, again, a classic sort of Star Wars silhouette. We've talked about this. I talked about this with Brian Barry when he was on my show a while ago. A number of my guests have brought that up as well. He struck a silhouette, a figure that was definable. But again, as much as he's making the sacrifice, this is why this show is just so damn good, is he sold you on his sacrifice, but he's also cold-heartedly, without thought, killing 50 of Krieger's men. Just, oh my God, he's just putting those pieces on the board and wiping them off. It's like Risk, right? He's just knocking them straight off the board, and it really raises all those questions about how ugly are you willing to get to win? And obviously, the great thing about this is that it's played against the way the Empire is treating these prisoners. All of a sudden, we now know they're not prisoners anymore. They're slaves. They're 100%. Yes. They're working till they die. And it doesn't matter if you're in there for a speeding ticket or serial murderer. You're all in there for the rest of your life. Yeah. And so it's an evil place to be. Chris, how did it strike you? Oh, go ahead, Nick. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it gave me another thought. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. We certainly talked about it with Nemik and not being sure where Nemik was, in this, the way Saw plays into this. What this also excites me for is where would Mon Mothma have been in this role? Would she have sacrificed 50 of Krieger's men? Would she, Lonnie? First of all, I love the fact that we have a character in Star Wars named Lonnie. Like, that's great. when he's like, Lonnie, we need you. But Lonnie is a dad with a kid and he wants out, and he's sacrificed a bunch already. And like he said, his health, mental health, physical health, that was the excuse he was going to give the ISB. But man, you go through that kind of mental stress. Like he's put in the work, he's put in the time. Yeah. So I imagine that conversation that Lonnie had with Luthen. What if Lonnie had that conversation with Mon Mothma? Would she have been the one to go, you're right, we can't sacrifice 50 lives. We can't. And it creates, I'm picturing in my mind the same conversation that Mon Mothma and Saw have in that episode of Rebels. Outside the temple on Yavin. I see a Mon Mothma Luthen, and we may get it before the end of this. And that may be where a path parts, and she hunkers down to stick with the Senate even more and continue to try and work with Davo and, Tay and whoever else. But it excites me for the possibility of a similar showdown, a similar monologue back and forth between Mon Mothma and Luthen for these ideals, the ideals of rebellion. What are the ideals of rebellion? What are the values of rebellion? And how we're getting to see that play out in every scene of this show.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. Well, let's talk about Mon Mothma for a second, because this was where it got real for her. And it's interesting. And again, this is something you can only do in a show that's willing to take its time, that's willing to make you feel every step of the way. Because I think we all thought that Mon Mothma felt for the first time like, this is more than me just giving speeches at the Senate, when she found out, or she made the connection between Luthen and Aldhani. And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, things are getting dirty. This is kind of gross. However, because to your point, Nick, I think Mon Mothma would have reacted differently to Lonnie. And it would have been very difficult, though, because what was so great about that speech from Luthen is he's right. They can't let him go. And the ISB won't let him go. So he's screwed. He's 100% trapped. Yep. But now for the first time, Mon Mothma's trapped. And this is what's so great about the conversation between Davo and Mon Mothma.
Yep.
May be some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen,
Mhm.
because it was every single line had a meaning. Every single line was kind of driving and stepping. And she, Davo starts by talking about Chandrillan marriage, right? Like he starts there. And at the same time, he tests to see what role her husband plays in it by saying, I speak to your husband. I've spoken to your husband a number of times. And she's just like, fine, let's move on. And
Right. We're
doesn't
not
tip
going
that
there.
hat. And then when suddenly, just the way he so subtly brought up, I want to bring my son here to meet your daughter. And the acting of Genevieve O'Reilly is
So good.
fantastic. Her face drops and she's like, get out. We're not talking about this. And then he says, think about it. And she says, I'm not. And he says, that's the first untrue thing you've said, and leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, where's her head at when he leaves?
That conversation aged her at least 8 years.
Yep.
Absolutely. It's if you were to pluck me out of 1983 and have me watch this show, I would be so mad at the writers for making the start of the rebellion so much less noble than what I thought it was. But what they're doing is needed, and what she's doing, what she has to go through is needed, and she's got some decisions to make, and you know that she's mulling this over. I almost fear for where this is going to go, but we know that things work out for the rebellion, so I'm really I'm worried to see what happens to that family dynamic, and maybe this is something that makes this could be a last straw kind of thing. Maybe the family like estranged from her, like her father, like her husband, and that dude and his daughter. If I could just go back to the Luthen young conversation for a quick second, that reminded me of something that was very, very Vulcan, and that is the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yep.
So I think that's where Luthen is with that, and it's messed up. But I'm like, yeah, he's kind of, in this extreme way, he's right, and that's ugly. And they've got to do things so that the galaxy sees how jacked up the Empire is. That stuff's gonna happen. But I'm sorry. Back to Mon Mothma. I just love how this guy was like, Davo was like, I don't need money. I got all the money I need. I need status. I need standing.
He wants access.
Yeah. It's so much. It's so very Game of Thronesy.
Yes.
With that. So, I really, really felt for her in that scene, because you saw her face just drop.
Yep. That's exactly what Jasmine said. Her face, the way it dropped when he said that. Just an introduction, and she's like, shutting it down. And it's so interesting. You said it, Chris, and you brought it up. How is it? Is it Leda, the daughter?
Leda.
Yeah, I think it's Leda.
Yeah. Leda and the husband. The fact that I can't wait to see how that's going to continue to play out. And I don't know if we're going to get it before the end of the series with these 2 episodes left, but I almost feel like the Mon Mothma that we get as she goes along, like this is going to be a woman who has suffered loss and has had to suffer loss completely by herself and privately. She's not going to get to mourn losing Krieger's men. She's not going to get to mourn, the potential for her husband to leave or for that marriage to dissolve and the daughter go with the dad, because there's obviously that dynamic there. Like this austere person and leader that we have seen first when she shows up in, Jedi, and when we see her in Rebels, that's a stone-faced leader who's carrying real raw emotion inside and has to be strong for people, but has to mourn and deal with all these emotions and things on her own, because it will show weakness. It will. And again, this show has me thinking about what happens when Perrin leaves, what happens with, what happens if she decides? Chaco just said exactly what I was about to say. What if she goes through with it? What if she ends up sacrificing her daughter for the sake of this rebellion, and she's committed at that point and makes that step?
Chaco, I think she will, and I think it will backfire in some way. That's just like, if I were writing it, that's probably what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's so tough that could go so many ways, and all of them are bad. So
that's what's so interesting about the show right now is everybody right now is in a spot where they've overcommitted. They are not overcommitted, but they can't get out.
They're overextended. Right? Yeah.
I mean, the very fact that Tay, and this again, I said it a couple of weeks ago that I thought initially that Tay was perhaps an Imperial spy. I don't think he is, but I think Tay is in this for himself. The fact that Tay brought this gangster in without telling her about it and told him everything because he knew. I mean, again, that was another one of those very subtle lines. And you know what? Go back and watch pieces of the show. I mean, I saw something today, off the subject of this one, but about Marva. Right? There was that one little Marva scene. They did nothing else with it. Usually, you know, they go somewhere and then they come back, and then the one Marva scene where the doctor walks in because she's giving up her meds. Now, one of the things that somebody mentioned, and this was a great video, and I wish I had it. I'll put a link in the audio version of the show when I find it. If you go back and watch like a couple, like episode 2 or 3, Brasso mentions to Bix about, well, isn't she part of the Daughters of Ferrix?
Yep.
And they're like, well, that's not going to help her, or she doesn't want their help or something. Right. If you watch that scene, it's all women other than the doctor, and women hanging out outside her building. And then another point there again, another single line that came from nowhere somewhere in this early in the season was Marva wants to see if the tunnel under the hotel still works. So they set these pieces in motion, right?
Yep.
So every single line in the Davos scene, when he walks in, I haven't been here in 30 years. All I want to do is come back. That's all I want. He's told us what he wants. And I'll answer Chaco. I think she will go through it with it, but by accident. I think Tay is going to say, look, just let him come back with his son. That's all he's asking for. And then the next step is going to happen, and something's going to happen with her husband who's going to get them together. And that's just going to crush her. Yeah. And that will be the thing that pushes her over. That'll be the line that she's gone too far, and she needs to commit to the rebellion. But
because I wonder at one point, because by the time we see her in Rebels, and of course going forward in Rogue One, and we see her again in Return of the Jedi, and of course through the comics and the novels, she is 100% committed. Something happens to that family.
Yep.
Yeah.
Something has got to happen, because she is all rebellion at that point. So, ooh,
absolutely.
Yeah. There's a crushing loss coming her way.
Going to be broken. Yeah.
Well, we want to make sure everybody who's watching is ready to call in a little bit with your thoughts on this and with what we're going to come up with next. I hate to cut this conversation short, but we're going to take a quick break, and when we do, we're gonna go and we're gonna get a little vintage with some stuff. And just look. It was just recently Nick's birthday. He's now officially old, so he's with us, and we want to go back in time a little bit.
Welcome, Sonny.
Welcome. Get off my porch, though.
Get off. Get off my lawn.
But we are going to be back in just a minute.
It's that time of year again, Life Day, and all those other holidays. And that also means it's gift-giving season. What better way to say happy holidays than with a colorful t-shirt emblazoned with my face? Nothing says I love you like giving a mug that reminds someone that they're one of your weird space friends. Proudly slap stickers on your personal belongings that declare that yes, you are a shill. With more than 30 designs, all the sizes and colors, you are sure to find something that'll make you whip out your credit card and buy something you'll have to explain to whoever's doing your laundry these days. Check back regularly for new designs, and if you see something you like, make sure to snag it before our Disney overlords remove it for borderline copyright infringement. Head on over to atgcast.com today and click the merchandise button. That's atgcast.com, and happy Life Day to those who celebrate.
we're back. Thanks for coming back. Hey, so I'm going to turn this over to Chris. We have this sort of idea of something to do between the end of Andor and the beginning of Bad Batch, which I think will be the next show to come up. It'll be during the holiday season. But Chris, give us a little bit of insight as to what you're thinking with this cool concept.
Okay, so and coming up for streaming Star Wars, we're going to have a segment called "Growing Up Star Wars." For Nick, Pete, and myself, we grew up in the 70s and 80s, and of course during the dark times when there was no Star Wars, nothing except for maybe some of the tabletop RPG book games and stuff like that. So we wanted to just go down memory lane, talk about some of the things that we collected over the years, talk about just our experiences growing up with Star Wars. So we're going to give you a little preview of that segment now, where we're going to do our own little old man show and tell. Anything, any of our collectibles, any of our books. So I'm going to start this off with one of three, because I don't know where the other ones are.
You'll find them, I'm sure.
And I have a few here, but I'm going to start with one of three of my very first Star Wars figures. And that is Han Solo. I don't know. Hopefully you can see that. Can you, how's that coming through?
Is that a 1978? Like,
oh yes, it is. Oh yeah. Now listen, I didn't collect these and like kept them aside for prosperity.
Sure, of course not.
No, I played the crap out of these figures. Look at them. Like, I'm doing my best to keep.
But and this is my question. This is actually yours from when you were a child.
Yes.
This is not one that you bought on eBay or recollected somewhere.
Nope.
This is originally yours. That's amazing.
This is my This is my
big head Han right there.
That's right. Yep. I got this at a store. I don't know if they had these anywhere else. Well, Pete, you may remember a store called Best.
No, we didn't have those up.
Is that just a Pennsylvania thing?
Yeah, maybe it might have been.
Maybe, but yeah, I think that was the first store I went to. My mom and dad got me, I think it was like 3 or 4 figures at once, and I know it was Luke, Han, Vader, and I think Leia was the other one. And yeah, listen, this thing is I played this thing hardcore. It is raggedy. It is it does it, like, even if you were to put it on like some kind of a stand, that's still going to happen. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This thing is
it's yoga hand.
It's yoga hand, yeah. So this is one of them. Like, and I've got a ton. I haven't even gone to my garage yet. We'll wait for other episodes before I go into my garage.
Yeah, wow.
And start grabbing, like, my AT-AT and all that stuff. But another one of my earliest ones. This is really bad.
Okay. Oh no, it's Headless Kenobi. Oh no!
Yeah.
What happened?
I played with him. I played a whole bunch with him. But I mean, everything else is intact. Yeah. What's up, dude?
It looks like Jasmine knows best.
Oh yes.
She had a comment right there for you.
Yeah. I love that place. I love the. I couldn't wait to get the catalogs because it had just Star Wars stuff in it, and it had they're all set up and cool, and like, oh, I want to make a play set like that. Yeah. I had issues. So yeah, yep. That's my Obi-Wan. The leather, cloak is still intact. The saber is not. It's gone.
I'll tell you what. I bet
along with his head.
I'll bet you could sell just the cape on eBay because people probably
for many dollars. Yep, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Another one I've got, and this guy's been through some stuff too.
He's seen some things.
Jango Fett's son.
Oh my
God. Fett, he's been through it. He had a War of the Bounty Hunters. He didn't come out in one piece.
Post Sarlacc.
It is. This thing is so weathered. All the paint's almost gone. The rocket's back there, but it doesn't come off.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that arm. I wish I knew. Yeah, this is one of my coolest figures right here.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm just seeing those as like flooding the memories back, and at least you still have yours. Mine are buried literally at my parents' old house in the. we grew up in a neighborhood that was, the houses were relatively new. They weren't all brand new, but there were like these big sand piles next to a lot of the houses from where they just like leftover sand and dirt. and we used to play in those things. So
Mhm.
I lost snow speeders and action figures
Yeah.
and every guns like immediately were
Yep.
missing. But like the great thing about that though is how much fun you had playing with them. Now, that's the whole key.
And here's one. If we're going to talk about figures being buried, like Brian brought up figures being
Yep.
buried. One Christmas, I think it was Christmas '83, and I got the Wicked figure. And back when I was a kid, I used to do I did Rebellion versus the Empire, but I did. Oops, I'm sounding shook. Yes, when I was a kid, I did the Rebellion versus the Empire and all that stuff. But it was more GI Joe versus Star Wars. That's what I did with my my figures.
Nice.
So like when I got this one Christmas, I got a bunch of GI Joe stuff, got a bunch of Star Wars stuff, and I got Wicked. I remember this vividly because I was so upset. I'm playing with the figures, and I had to simulate an explosion, and it was snowing outside. And I was playing outside with the figures, so I had my Wicked up on this on the top of this one little pile of snow, and it simulated this explosion. I kicked the pile of snow, never saw Wicked again.
Oh man,
it got buried someplace. Never saw it again. This is 1983. This is December 1983. Not until, and I'm not bullshitting you here. Not until 2005, when I went to go visit my mom, was I standing in the front yard.
Oh my God!
And I found him.
Holy
no way!
All kinds of dirt. Like I was just like, what? I'm like, I wasn't like sobbing, but I was like, oh my God, there you are.
That's
like,
amazing.
Holy cow.
Like I found him, and like there's probably still some dirt on him now. I tried to get it off as best I could, but I cannot believe 22 years later,
wow,
I find him. It's insane. It's insane. So yeah, it's and he was so tiny. I never told my mom until I visited her that day, and I found it. I was like, "You're not going to believe this."
Shout out to the whole thing. Kenner Quality Control. Holy cow!
Yeah,
I mean, it still looks like
this looks fantastic. And the last one of the main ones. Nick, you're going to love this one.
Here it is.
Because it holds a connection for you and I.
Yep. There it is.
Just got cricked. Cricks Nadine. Oh my gosh.
Yes, sir. Yes,
that's
sir.
a figure right there.
Yep. I think you're the only guy who had that because I didn't.
What? Really?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. That's the thing about the figures from Empire and Jedi was like I had a bunch, but I don't have any of them anymore. But I actually have some photos, which maybe I'll share when we kick into the show next month. But because our parents didn't know what to buy. It had the Star Wars card, right? I mean, I had Bespin Cloud Car drivers. Like I had Bespin guards, like 4 of them. Like no, I wouldn't have asked for that, but that's what you got because they just took what was. And I'll tell you what, if you go, I imagine there's probably a number of Jyn Ersos that get bought every day by grandmothers who just see a Star Wars logo because that's all that's left on the Walmart pegs right now.
It's like that and Lando's. Like that's
right. Constable Zuvios.
Yeah, I'll tell you this: like, I never didn't get a Star Wars figure that I didn't want because, like, when it came to Christmas and whatnot, my view of Santa Claus changed. I think by the time I was like 5 or 6, that's when I knew that it was mom and dad. So for me, they were like, "We're not going through the whole thing of let me just get him. Hopefully, I get what he wants." When it came to toy shopping for Christmas, I was there with them. Oh, and I just wasn't allowed to touch anything until Christmas. So yeah, I'm just like Akbar. Maydeen, the Rebel Commando, and I just like I was given an allotted number, and I just stuck within that number with that stuff. So, yeah,
awesome. And what were they, like $3 a piece too, or something like that, right?
$2.97.
Yep.
I don't know how I remember that. Let me see. Let me grab a couple more just to. You can't have a Han without. That guy, that Greedo,
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's held up a little bit better than my Han has. He can still like stand upright. Anakin Skywalker from the you had to send away for that one.
I never had the Anakin. Wow.
Oh, really? Yeah. I had to, I sent away for him. I sent away for who's the other one? Who's the other one? It's not in here. Yeah, he is. Wait, no, he's not. Anyway, it was 9. No, I had stayed away from the 9. No.
yeah.
And here's my first C3PO. Like I said, man, I play hard with these things, man.
Luke Skywalker
Classic
Same
Star
here.
Wars.
Well, he found out that Vader was
Somebody's
his
losing a
father
hand.
too. So, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Love it.
That's
Truly fantastic.
really cool. Awesome. But Nick, do you have anything handy you want to share?
I do have a couple things. Let's do this. All right. Since we're talking about figures, I wasn't really going to talk about figures at all. And this is my thing. I'm so proud of you, Chris. I'm envious of you. Nothing that I had as a kid has survived into my adulthood. Like I have one thing that's not Star Wars related. It's something different. But no childhood Star Wars toys that I had survived.
It's just Holly Hobby.
you know,
Mm.
Yeah,
you
that's
still
right.
have to
my Cabbage Patch doll. But as a Star Wars fan who grew up with this stuff, and of course the wonders of eBay, you recollect things, you find things, you whatever. Talking about figures, and because you talked about Wicket, and we'll get to Wicket in a second, I did find a couple years ago, and I'm honestly at the moment am blanking on how I found these. I have these guys now.
Nice.
Whoa, from the Droids show.
But these are not
no,
the
from the
Droids
Ewoks.
figures
Oh,
that came out at the time, because there's Droids figures that went with the Droids cartoons, and they're
Okay.
very high dollar. They're very
Yeah.
collectible.
Are
These
these
are
the new
rubber.
ones?
No, these came from my understanding, I've had to do some research on this. They came from a Spanish comic book line.
okay.
Oh, wow.
And like they came with the comic books, like they're rubber. They're not articulated, like it's just a rubber figurine. So I've got
Wow.
R2 and 3PO, but they're modeled after the Droids, cartoon.
Yeah.
But there is also a Wicket,
Oh,
with
wow.
his
Whoa.
deranged pink
It's a scary
eyes.
looking Wicket.
Yeah,
Whoa.
this Wicket will haunt your nightmares, haunt your dreams a little bit.
Oh, goodness gracious.
So because you talked about Wicket and talked about figures, I had to do that. I do have some of the vintage figures. I have gone through a couple of phases of like collecting them, buying them on eBay, and then realizing like that kind of takes the fun out of like hunting and finding them in the wild. And so like I resold them on eBay, and but I have behind me working on the original first 12, with the figures. Yeah, exactly. Crackett's gonna haunt your dreams forever. Yeah, Jeff, so much for sleeping tonight. So I have some figures, but the two things that I especially wanted to pull up for this little experiment, which is so much fun already, are things that I've collected as an adult. And I'm a big, anything vintage. If it's, the Ralph McQuarrie prints that you could get, of course, I've got them framed behind me on the wall. I've got some in the packet. I found them at a local flea market here for like $15. The whole, portfolio of those packets. I've got the Star Wars blueprints,
Nice.
from the
Wow.
late 70s, early 80s. I don't have enough wall space or frames or money to frame all the things that I want to frame as a, art guy. But I love truly vintage things and like very niche things. So the first thing that I want to share is based on, and I don't remember the first time I saw this clip. And Pete, if you want to get ready to run that in just a second, it's from one of the Star Wars behind the scenes. It may be Empire of Dreams. I didn't have time to rewatch it today to, figure out the original source of it. But there's a clip that takes place, and I think it's from a behind the scenes after Luke returns from blowing up the Death Star, and Carrie Fisher hands a beer up to Mark Hamill in the X-Wing. And so, Pete, will you hit that real quick?
Sure. Yep.
So that exists, and it exists in GIF form, however you say that word. And it's one of those things that as an adult and a lover of beer and craft beer and alcohol and Star Wars and all these, like these paths kind of crossed. And one day I saw it, I went, what is she handing him? So I did some deep dives. I did a little research, and I found
Oh, wow.
End Coop Double Diamond Pilsner beer. It's a British beer, and you can get these They're pretty available on eBay. In fact, I'll just go ahead and tell both of you, my streaming Star Wars bros, I've ordered one for both of you to send to you.
Oh,
Because it's such a weird, niche, Star Warsy little something. Like,
Yeah.
what is it in that clip that made me go, what is she handing him? Oh, it's handing him a beer. And whatever. And like this one, it hasn't been opened, but they drained it on the bottom. Somebody, old tin beer can, the peel off top. Like,
Yeah.
Again, as somebody who loves beer and Star Wars, it's made for me. It's a perfect, weird, collectible thing. And it's
that's going in the
vintage as
case.
hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a cool, neat,
That is
whatever.
really
So that
cool.
was the first thing that I wanted to share. The other one, I talk about my recollecting some of the things I had as a kid. Really started in 2017. I went to Celebration with my good buddy Chad. Shout out to Chad, who lives, near me. We went to Orlando for one day. Drove down. We had one day at Celebration. Overwhelming. Like, one day at Celebration isn't enough for anything, but I had never
Right.
been before. We had all these conversations about collecting. I was on the show floor and I saw like my entire childhood laid out before me in all these vendors
Yep.
booths.
Yep.
Toys, figures, things I didn't have the money or the space to bring back with me. But I did grab this guy.
Oh,
I
wow.
had that. Yeah.
It's
The
the
storybook,
Empire,
right?
and
It's got the
It
record.
does-
Oh, yeah.
it does have the record. I do not currently have a record player, but it's on my short list of things that I'm hoping to accomplish maybe before Christmas, because kids and teenagers and music and whatnot.
Wow.
But these storybooks were a
Mhm.
hardcore part of my childhood.
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Blowing up, listen, the R2D2 that beeped when it was time to turn the page. I had a Fisher Price record player, and I wore these things out. And so to get this, when I went to sell, and honestly, this was like maybe $5 or $10. It was such a
Wow.
great
That was big money
snag.
back then, man. Yeah.
Right. No, I'm saying it was $5 or $10 in 2017 at
Oh
Celebration.
my God.
Oh, wow.
Which was a heck of a deal. But yeah, 24-page read along, book and record, story, music, photos from the original motion picture. And then of course I love, as a vintage art guy, vintage, any of this stuff, the
Beautiful.
ads on the back, see the pictures, hear the records, word for word story narration. They just plugged it all in. And it was so, again, when I saw this on a table at Celebration, I was like, that's my childhood.
Yeah.
Like, that was that moment that transported me back immediately. So
Wow.
those were a couple of things that I grabbed. And again, I could go on too much all night, but I do have the Best of Starlog, Mark Hamill from 1980,
Love it.
just these kinds of random
Oh, yeah.
things that I don't have enough wall space for, but I keep grabbing them anyhow.
Yeah, that's the problem with collecting, right? You're like, I don't know where I'm going to put. I mean, I'm that way with current stuff, with helmets and pops, and just like I'm officially out of space. I continue to tell
Until the
myself-
next one. That's right.
Right, I continue to tell myself I'm selling this pop collection, and then I get two more because they're new and they're cool,
And then I
pre-order
randomly
them.
go to Target and I see a pop and I take
Yeah.
a picture of it.
Yeah,
And it
do
goes,
you have this one?
"Ooh,
Oh,
ooh."
no.
I do that to Dan all the time. He's like, I can't keep doing this. I'm like, hey man, I got some
Hey,
I got
buddy.
some Andor t-shirts in. You want one? He's like,
Just
oh,
one more. Just one more. yeah.
fine. Hey man,
Oh,
I got
exactly.
that Dr. Black series. You want one? Yes.
That's right.
I don't
Well, what
want
about
it, but I need it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Pete, what about you? Because I want to see what you've got for us, and then we want to get some callers in here because I know we've got a couple of folks who have some things they'll share or
Absolutely.
thoughts about Andor, whatever it is.
Whatever's on your mind, we definitely want to hear. So I'm going to start I'll start with this. This was so all of you probably know my Star Wars Galaxy connection, my little story.
Yep.
I ran one of the first Star Wars websites ever, possibly the first ever Star Wars fan site, Echo Base, on an AOL server thing years and years ago. And I ended up hooking up with Steve Sansweet, and I remember the first Steve Sansweet book I got, and I remember looking at it on my shelf when I talked to Steve Sansweet for the first time, and I still have the original version from 1992 that I got. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people have this book.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually like one of the more popular books that people have. But this
I don't
was
have that one. I've got to
this-
find that.
this was the 1992 original print of it.
Ooh, I just saw my favorite series. There
Oh,
it is.
the
Mm.
C3POs.
Yeah.
But it's just a really like I'll be honest, a lot of these books with pictures, I'm like, I'll look through the pictures and maybe never read it, but I've read this 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times straight through, and it's just all the collectibles. And this was when Steve Sansweet was really becoming known for his collectibles. It was before Rancho Obi-Wan. It was at a time when Star Wars collectibles were starting to sort of happen again. It was pre-Power of the Force. Star Wars collectibles were kind of unique, and so there's that. And then the second thing that I'm going to share here is, so again, related to my backstory, my origin story, and having written all the questions for my dad's science fiction and horror trivia game. So to promote that game, it was a board game. It was if Matt from Enid is listening, Matt found one and sent it to me. It is a monster. It is huge.
Amazing.
But to promote that game, my dad and his partners would go around to various conventions, which there were no Star Wars conventions at the time. There were Star Trek conventions, they were horror conventions, they were television conventions, and there were tables and tables and tables of people who were, side characters in Doctor Who and Twilight Zone and Star Wars. And again, back in the mid to late 90s, these guys didn't have much to do. And so they were taking just about everybody. So what I have here is signed by Femi Taylor herself, a signed
No
Ula
way.
action figure, complete with Salacious Crumb.
Salacious Crumb.
Shout out to Claire
Nice.
Stribling for this one.
Yeah.
But this is one of a number of that I'll probably share a little bit over as we continue this journey. But over that time, a lot of the Star Wars actors who had bit parts and back parts went to various conventions, and my dad would be there, and he would see them, and he would buy their figure, and he would have them sign it, and I'd get a call from my dad like, do you know who Femi Taylor is? I'm like, not really. And he's like, it was Ula, and I met her this weekend, and she signed a figure for you. And I'd get together with him, and there it was. So I have a whole drawer of some, and some are bigger names than others, but it was just kind of a cool thing. So that's two to get started. But it's interesting.
That's very cool.
Next point. I don't think I have much, if any, of my original 7 or 8 year old Pete stuff anywhere, unless it's at my parents' house, which I need to go and check out. But yeah.
Well, you buried the lead just a little bit for anybody who hasn't watched a ton or kept up, but Pete wrote for Star Wars Galaxy magazine as a part of meeting Steve Sansweet, having this opportunity. I have searched. I haven't done enough research, and I'm still working on it. I don't have a Pete Fletzer Star Wars Galaxy magazine yet. I'm going to get one at some point.
Well, yeah, I'll send one out tomorrow for you.
I do have this one that I grabbed. Actually, Andy from Hollow Chronicles may have sent me this one. This is the one that came with like some McQuarrie like postcards inside of it, concept art stuff.
Pretty sure I had that one. Yeah.
But it's so fun. At 1995, again, just going back.
Yep.
The ads, the posters, the postcards. Dennis Muren, God love Dennis Muren in the 90s.
Dennis Muren has aged very uniquely. He's I'm not going to say
this whole thing, this episode, and
looks
partially
like Lex
the reason I
Luthor
want
right
to do
now.
it.
He's fine.
Actually, here's a great one for you, Pete.
Yep.
Another spin around the galaxy.
Yep. 100%. That was the column that I ended up taking over for a couple issues, and that's
Gary
where Around the
Girani.
Galaxy
But again,
Nice.
for me, just chock full of concept art. This one was about
the
Ralph
early
McQuarrie.
Coruscant. Oh man, yeah.
Yep. The old applause figures on the back,
figures. Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
wow.
So much fun stuff. And again, I have an entire stack right here to my left. Don't let me get into it, but it just so much fun there. So we do have the link streaming across the top of the screen. Type it in. I don't know if you can put it in the chat or not, Pete. If we need to put it in there for people to click on. But we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear thoughts about Andor episode 10. If you have a quick, old guy show and tell something you want to show us. Any other thoughts? Sports talk radio for Star Wars. That's what we do on Friday night. So
absolutely
hit that link, join us. We'd love to hear from you.
We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we will take your call. So dial in right now. Go to bit.ly/ATGcast. All right. Well, we'll be back in just 1 minute with your phone calls.
This is Clanker,
And I am MK0.
and we're here to tell you about Geek John Toys and Collectibles. What the hell is a John?
John is a slang term that is commonly used in the eastern United States city of Philadelphia, meaning virtually anything.
Ah, so nerdy stuff then.
I would assume so. Please continue.
Right. Geek John Toys and Collectibles is your pop culture destination for all the plastic crap you're addicted to. From action figures to comic books, from Funko Pops to high-end merch, they have the stuff from all the major and indie companies alike. Check out their eBay store to see their wide range of items.
Find them on their eBay store at ebay.com/USR/GeekJohnOutpost or email them at geekjohnoutpost@gmail.com.
Geek John, these are the Johns you're looking for. Oh my maker, I can't believe they made me say that.
Well, we
Oh,
are back.
Clanker.
It's a fun place.
Always
that
a-
Geek John.
Is it? You familiar with it a little bit?
Yeah, I know a little bit about that.
All right. Well, that's cool. That's
Chris knows people.
Chris knows people who know people.
I'm people who know people.
Well, we don't. We've got some folks I know who are going to be calling in. I talked to Jeff earlier. I think he was going to call in and holler at us and show something. He said he had something ready. But while we're waiting, I'll take just a quick moment of privilege. I've got a couple other things just right here. Again, just conveniently at reach. This one is not old, and this one is not super vintage, super whatever, other than less than a mile from my house, we have a movie theater. Right next to that movie theater on the corner is a comic book store. And I don't spend a lot of time in comic book shops because I'm not a comics guy, to Chris's dismay. Working on it. But I've popped in there on occasion, and he's got a little corner. He's got some vintage things. He's got, a figures, a box, something. And I was in there, 6-8 months ago. That's actually where I picked up the Starlog magazine, picked up a couple of things. And I saw this thing on the shelf, and I thought, I need to know more about that. And I did some kind of you go in the store and you do like a little side eBay, side Google, is this a thing? Because it doesn't seem, this is what I got. And I think, Pete, I've told you about this before. Chris, I don't know if you know about this. I found, this is an episode 1 press packet that was sent out on the back. I don't know if we can get it on here. Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace, Liam Neeson, Lucasfilm, 20th Century Fox. It's got all the things. It's in a folder. It's this cool little folder. But we open this folder up.
Wow.
It's
awesome.
got
stills.
It's got the slides of the stills. These would have been the things that were sent out to the press to use as they were writing articles. It's got let me turn this around real quick. It's got a description of all the captions for the slides. So if somebody was giving it to their editor or their print, this is what it is. It's also got actual press photos, descriptions. Here's my favorite. And I mean, the most Scotty Jarrow thing you've got. George and Rick McCallum all hanging out right here.
Rick McCallum is my hero.
It's so many Maul and Padme. This one actually cracks me up. In the bottom, you've got Jar Jar looking into the camera. So those are great. And then it also has basically the press guide.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so it's got all the descriptions of vehicle, spaceship designs, costume designs, everything that they would have sent out in a limited number to press members to cover this when it was coming out in print, in newspapers, in wherever. How it ended up at a comic book store in Montgomery, Alabama, I truly don't know. It's got
Who could get
right
rid of
down
it?
here at the bottom.
How could you get
For
rid of
further
that?
information, contact 20th Century Fox, P.O. Box 900, Beverly Hills, California.
Wow.
How much did that
$50.
run you? That's it.
$50.
$50. Wow.
This.
Wow.
That whole and the guy didn't really know enough about it, and he tried, and he was like, I mean, this and that and whatever. But I was like, it's just cool, and it felt just unique enough that, like, you know, when I've Googled it, when I've tried to find them, like, there's a couple different ones. There's a silver version of this, and I don't know what's different other than the folder color, but like, it's just one of those unique, like, I feel like I need to grab this because, you know, it's $50 for something that happened now, what, 20, God knows how many years ago?
23 years ago. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, too much time about my nonsense. We've got some callers. We've got some friends. Pete hit a video. Let's get some of these friends in here.
All right.
Greetings, Exalted One.
There he is.
There he is,
Quaglio.
Jeff.
What's up,
Joining
man?
us live.
Pete. What's up,
How are
Pete?
you,
What's
man?
up, Chris? What's up,
What's
Nick?
up, dude?
Dan, if you see the hat, wherever you are, Dan, thanks for the link for the hat.
He's fishing in cyberspace right now.
All right. All right. So
What's up, sir? What's on your
a
radar
little of the
tonight?
show and tell thing. Pete, you've already seen this, but I was going to show you again because eventually I'm going to send it to you. But this poster here is the
Yes.
episode 2 teaser.
Yes. Look at that.
Okay.
Yep.
But the backstory is that a good friend of mine worked in the movie theater, and so it's the one that came out of the marquee actually.
Nice.
That was in the marquee. So I had it in a frame. The frame
Oh, it's
broke.
beautiful.
So I wanted to. So anyway, that's what I showed you earlier, Pete. I'm eventually going to send that to you.
I love
Anyway,
that. It's
and so
beautiful.
the thing there's this is going to be a theme going forward. A few episodes of doing these little show and tells. I'm going to pull one little thing out tonight, but it's a total recollect. My mom, she's eventually going to watch the show. She's not watching it now. She threw all my stuff out, garage sale, whatever, all the stuff from me growing up. I've shamed her many times about it, still to this day. In her defense, she had no idea of knowing it would become vintage like that. But this was the one thing I was going to show you here because it's pretty awesome.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh. Wow.
So these are broke.
Still has the back gun on it too.
yeah.
Sheesh.
If I twist this, it'll just break right off. See, so there's.
I had the same mine was taped on. Mine was taped
Yes.
on with Scotch
Yeah.
tape.
I peeled some
still
tape
lost
off some of this stuff, but also
Yeah.
Chris, he's inside the cockpit there.
Oh, look at
Yeah.
that. Han Solo.
See, the
Beautiful.
cockpit just peels right off. So
Yep.
it's
Hey, at least
been
you still
some
have
battle.
at least you still have the canopy. Mine's gone.
Yeah.
You have a
And he's
string
got
in
the
the back?
glass.
All
in the
that's
canopy.
gone. The
even the
guns-
glass,
Yeah, yeah. it's
even
all
the glass in there.
Yeah. Wow.
That's amazing.
The
Beautiful.
glass somehow goes immediately. The glass just within weeks of first owning it, the glass.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're 12 years old, they give it to you and then they take that away and it disappears. And they throw it
It's like
in the
why
garbage.
even make it come out? I don't understand why it's 2 pieces. Just make it 1 piece and save everybody the time.
Like Jeff, I think
Anyway.
your mom had the same idea that my mom had, because my mom was like, "I paid for all this stuff. It's mine." So like when the stuff became like it started to get real valuable, she's like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's all mine, all of it."
Yeah. Like, well, don't get rid of it. She's
I
like,
just
no.
smuggle stuff
You're-
out of the house when I moved out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're too old to play with it now, so it's
Yeah,
gone.
so I'll
So, and
just
then
sell
like
it
all
and
these
make
years
a-
later, I've got kids, and I'm like, yeah, it'd be nice if I had a big box of all the Star Wars stuff I had to paint the bottom of their feet with red fingernail polish because a good friend had all the same toys, and he painted his with black fingernail polish so we could tell which one's apart at the end of the day when we're separating all our stuff, and I got to go home and dumping it in the box.
It's a good idea.
Kept us from mixing up. So anyway.
That's awesome.
So anyway,
Love
that's
it.
my little thing. Here's to you guys.
Awesome.
Andor was fantastic. It was Spartacus in space. I'm telling you, if you haven't watched Blood and Sand, way less boobies, but it was the same concept.
Yeah, a whole lot
The
less
guys
butts.
revolting.
Yeah,
Yes, a lot less male butts.
yeah,
And,
a lot less dude butts.
Butts,
yeah.
period. It's like build the escape, build the turn of everybody buying into it, and then once the other guys realize that it's happening, they all just join in and they just overrun
It was beautiful.
the guards.
Yeah.
Exactly what
Yeah.
happened in Blood and Sand.
Good
It's like
stuff.
the perfect mirror of that show. That's the music was the intensity of it was just, and as good as that scene was with Genevieve O'Reilly, her face just changing right there. I found myself every time they would cut away from the prison, I was like, oh damn, no,
Yeah.
no, back.
Yeah.
Like, stop
Go
jumping. So
Well,
I mean,
Amazing.
every time they'd cut away, I'd be falling out of my chair like, "Damn, they got me again."
Yeah.
So,
Well, two quick things about the Prison Break that I noticed that people have mentioned, but I think it's really interesting. And I watched it 4 times. First of all, the first time he said climb, I was like, that is clearly a theme between Nemec, between him, between
Rogue
K2.
One. Yep.
But the other thing was when he yells attack and starts running, all I could see was Caesar from Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
He runs like a
Absolutely.
chimpanzee.
100%.
well done.
Together.
Yeah, I never thought
Yeah.
about that, but that's pretty. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'd say like the
Yeah.
one thing I
Awesome.
loved about this episode also is that we had the most intense plumbing scene ever in a TV show or movie. Like that was the plumbing was just like Mario Brothers has nothing on what Andor was
Nothing
doing in this thing.
on Andor. That's it.
And as a
Basically,
homeowner, it
forever
was
to get
very
that
stressful.
pipe to break too.
Yeah.
It was like 3 cutaways,
Well,
and he was like almost
and
got it
just-
break.
And just to throw another shout out to Pete in the episode Wednesday that dropped on the ATG cast feed, that conversation that he had with all those creators, the behind the scenes folks that are working on the show, there was a conversation about in the, production design and those one-to-one real life spaces, like a bathroom. When Cassian gets arrested and he's at that resort in the beach town, like he goes into the bathroom and he's got the money hidden up on top of the shower or whatever it was. Like that we are getting. It's not just the name refresher in a story. It's not just, the whatever, like we're getting to actually see, oh, there is plumbing in Star Wars. Oh, there is, all that kind of stuff. So just, it connects. It's right there.
Space plumbing. Where does it vent? I mean, does it dump into LA too, or is that?
Yeah, exactly. So Jeff, thank you so much for popping in tonight. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
your old guy show and tells. You're definitely one of us. We're going to send you on your way. We've got another caller hanging out.
Love you
but
guys. See you guys later.
Thanks,
See you
buddy.
soon.
Good to see you. Take care.
See you around, kid.
Now, always good to see Jeff. I am excited to also say when we run our video to get our next caller in here, I'm going to jump over to the YouTube stream for just a minute. We've got a visitor in our YouTube chat.
Yeah.
May have to send them along on their way.
That's how you know you've made it, by the way.
That's right.
When
You
you
made
we
it.
do? Oh,
Made
that's great.
something.
I haven't noticed that one yet. So
We've got some other things, but Pete, why
Yes.
don't you hit us with a video? Let's get our next caller in here and we'll keep this party rolling.
all right.
Go for Papa Palpatine.
You have a collect call from.
Darth Vader.
Ugh, I gotta take this. Hold on.
Brian,
Yeah.
What's up, boys?
are you the Triple X Hot Girls picks for you? Are you the one setting that in?
Is
for us,
that you, Bib?
Only on the weekends.
That's
Only
awesome.
on the weekends.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you
no,
got for us, man?
well, much like Jeff's mom, my mom threw everything of mine out when I like about 2 days after I moved out.
Wow.
Oh,
So the only things I really still have, I mean, unless there's something of my brother's, because they kept all my brother's stuff, just not mine.
Sure.
But the only stuff
That's
that
how
I
that
have,
usually goes.
yeah, that's middle child syndrome for you.
of course.
But I still do have the one item that really made me the huge Star Wars nerd that I am today,
Okay.
and
Gotta see
that
this.
is this book.
Oh,
Ah, nice.
There it is.
This
Oh
is
my
still-
gosh. Hardcover.
Hardcover, still
Beautiful.
the same book from
I
1991.
was gonna say, is that a first printing? Looks
It
like
is. It is. My
Amazing.
older brother bought this book and didn't like it. I stole it from him when he was done with it, like a week or two later, or however
Yep.
long it was. I think I was 11 at the time, and it was just downhill from there.
Oh yeah.
Wow. So that was like your first foray into Star Wars?
Well, not really. Like I had the toys when I was a kid, but I was born in '80, so I was a little younger for a lot of stuff. Like the first Star Wars I watched
first wave,
was Caravan for Courage or Caravan of
Oh
Courage.
wow.
Like I was
Holy
an
cow.
Ewok kid.
Yep.
Okay.
So
That's
like
amazing.
I always joke that I had my dad had a copy of the Ewok movie on Betamax.
Huh.
And then a dub of
Yep.
Return of the Jedi on Betamax. That was all I watched when I was a kid.
That's amazing.
That's so great.
That,
I have
Good old Wilford Brimley, huh?
Diabetes.
diabetes. I just recently introduced my kids to diabetes, and they're like, "Oh, I've seen that before." And I'm like, "Yeah, you've seen that before." But but this is a real guy, and he was, all these things that we watched, whether it was Cocoon or Ewoks or Life Goes On, like all the different things that he was on. Just they're like, "Wait, he was an actor?"
I saw something posted to. Oh, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Do you know that Brimley was only like 50?
50
when he made Cocoon.
Yeah, Cocoon.
Yep.
Yeah,
he's just old looking.
He was.
Well, it's
he
like
was,
the Golden Girls. When the Golden Girls
God.
were on, they were all like early 50s. Like, they were
well,
teenagers.
yeah,
Like,
now
what
they,
are
right,
we-
exactly. When the Golden Girls are like, they're like, I'm so old. I'm like, nah,
No, you're really not.
In 1980, when I was a kid, you were old, but now you're not.
Not so much.
But they still look older. But it's funny. I just saw, I think it was on Twitter today, a tweet about the fact that Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day is the exact age that Wilford Brimley was in Cocoon, like
It's amazing.
this week or something.
It's there's a Twitter feed. I think it's a Twitter feed. There's a Twitter feed called the Brimley Line, and they tweet regularly. Yeah, they tweet regularly when somebody becomes the age that Wilford Brimley was in Cocoon, which was the movie about senior citizens and the whole deal.
That's so funny.
I want to tag this on to Brian's, and it is just pure kismet and luck and whatever that it is right here within my reach, because everything I own Star Wars is in this little corner of my garage. But those books, that Heir to the Empire, that trilogy was so formative for me as a an OT guy going through that dark time. Old EU, like that's the core of me loving Star Wars in the 80s and 90s. And of course I got the Target ones. They did the re-releases not that long ago, the new covers and all that stuff. I got them right back here. They're great. They're just going to sit because I love them. But not that long ago, end of last school year, maybe beginning of this school year, my middle child, who's in 4th grade, came home from school and she's like, "Dad," she's like, "Miss whoever the librarian is, there's a bunch of books outside the library at school and people could just take them if they wanted books. I got a book for you." I was like, "Oh, that's so sweet." Like, what did my kid bring to me? My kid brought to me Dark Force Rising, the paperback.
Wow.
Nice.
All she knew was she saw these 2 words at the top of it, Star Wars. So I don't have the other 2 to go with it, but now on my list of things I need is the other 2 paperbacks that will match this well-loved, well-used copy of that same trilogy. And I was like, I will instantly put it in my studio.
Yeah, I actually still have all 3 in hard copy, the originals.
That's so great.
That, and then I have
love
one
that.
more. This was another just vintage at this, but this is like really don't have much. It's just that and the trade.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yep.
Look
I
at
had
there.
that as well. Jesus,
Hey, wait.
I still had that.
Well, it's not Dark Empire, but inside the cover of this one, Champions of the Force, Kevin Anderson.
Kevin and Jay Anderson. Also
That's
now
so
a
fantastic.
Dune author. If you're a Dune guy, he's writing all the Dune books with.
He's all into Dune right now.
Yeah. Yep. That's awesome. That's cool stuff.
Amazing.
Brian, any thoughts on Andor this week?
Nothing that hasn't been said. I love the what Jeff said about Spartacus. Absolutely on point.
Yes. Yep.
The climb. Every time he goes climb, my heart breaks a little more.
Yeah. Yep. And it won't be the last time we hear it either. I guarantee.
Oh, absolutely not.
It's clearly a theme, and it's such a subtle pickup, and because it means so much, it's got it. That's what struck me this time around. I don't know why I missed the first 2 times, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to climb out of the situation they're in, and it requires you to pull yourself up. You got to pull yourself through, and the act of climbing is if you climb a tree, if you climb whatever, like it's a physical act. It means so much, to be able to apply that to the theme of Star Wars and Rebellion and where they are right now and what they're trying to get to. So it's so good, and it's like I said, we're going to hear it again. So
and it's wild to think we've only got 2 episodes left.
And sad
how good it has been. And to know, we finished an arc with this episode this week. Like, you know, the last two are going to kind of, you know, sum it up and also get us ready for what season 2 is going to be. We know it's going to be the 3 episode year jumps leading up to Rogue One for season 2. But like, again, it's all out there in front of us. Cassian's out again. Does he go find Marva to make sure she's okay? Does, you know, we've got all
He's
these
with
places he
Melshi
can
now.
go. Yeah, and he's running off with Melshi, which is the other thing. And it's so funny. Like, Melshi was not on my radar until he showed up in the first episode he showed up in, and everybody's like, oh, holy crap, Melshi's there. He was in Rogue One. I'm like, I don't really remember him from Rogue One. But now that I realize, like, he's a thing, it becomes that, you know, it ties it all together, which is why we love this so much.
And again, we don't know why Melshi was there. Melshi might have been, he may already be a rebel spy. He may already be in, he may already be in it.
What if he's a mass murderer who's been there for a while?
Or a speeding ticket. One of the two.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't know.
So was Luke Skywalker.
Jaywalking, yep.
Jaywalking. The Skywalker.
Cutting off hands left and right.
Yeah, that's right. Luke's a terrorist. He killed millions or hundreds of thousands. Whoever, you know, I mean,
he did. He did. Space Fox News would have really
let him have it.
Would have. You know, that's what we got to do. We got to create like Space Fox News and just like
Space MSNBC,
right? And just be like Hannity and oh my god! All right, I know where
we're gonna get into Bombad territory with Space. What's his name?
Space Alex Jones.
Yeah, Space Alex Jones. Yeah, we may want to stay away from that. Leave that to Scotty and Jimmy.
Yeah,
let's
let the experts do it.
Awesome. Well, Brian, it's always so good to see your face. It's always so good to hear from you. Thanks for calling in, and we'll hopefully see you again next week.
Absolutely.
See you, man. Stay safe.
All right, guys.
Godspeed, rebels.
Oh man, that was great. Always good to see Brian and Jeff, our regulars. It's good to have regulars. Good guys.
Always
too.
good.
Really good. Yeah. So next week I will
done it.
Yeah, I will not be here next week. I'll be doing a 4-H thing with my kids. So it'll be Chris and Nick and maybe a third host. I know.
I've got a couple lines on a possible third guest host to help us out. No details just yet, but
safe. That's safe.
Yep, something in the works.
Chris, I know Nick normally does this, but what do you have going on this week?
Well, this week we've got 3 new quick shots of Bro Axiom Star Wars comics previews. We've got Han and Chewie. That one drops. We've got Dr. Afro, which Claire's going to be doing. Han and Chewie. Dan's going to be doing. And then Charles Soule's third crossover series starts up with Hidden Empire. I've been real excited for this one, and I cannot wait for this one to start. The Star Bros have a new episode where they're going to be discussing because their podcast is bi-weekly, so they're going to be doing episode 9 and 10 of Andor.
Cool.
And that's dropping at some point this week, and it's going to be great. Like if you guys love Star Wars easy listening, these guys are the ones for you for sure. And we just started this past Monday. We did our first episode of Reading Rainbow, which we're going to be doing like we do readings of like full issues of Star Wars comics. Brian Fantasy was a part of that one. He was Bib Fortuna. Kyle Katarn was there. He played the Emperor. I finally got to fulfill a dream and play Darth Vader.
Your Vader was good, man. Your Vader was good. I was supposed to be Jabba, but I got the flu this week. I picked it up.
Your voice would have been perfect.
Yeah, but my snoring and falling asleep would not have worked out very well.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah. But yeah, so we got that going on, and of course, it's Sunday. You know, we got Shooting the Poodoo, where we're talking about Andor some more and a whole bunch of other stuff. Maybe some DC Titans because that show is amazing, and a little Wakanda Forever because that movie was dope. Yeah, can't wait.
Awesome. And Nick, what's it's this Thursday is Podcast of the Worlds.
It is this week. It was supposed to be this current week. It was supposed to be yesterday, but we changed the schedule a little bit because I did want you and I both wanted to share the conversation you got to have with the Andor creators. So we flip-flopped the schedule a little bit. So this coming Thursday on Podcast of the Wills on the ATG Cast stream is Tim Barnes. Tim Barnes is one of the 3 hosts of the Yub Nub podcast. Tim wrote for Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. He has a great YouTube short series called Maurice on Mars. I definitely encourage you to check that out. But just a fun Star Wars conversation. That's what we've spent a lot of our time here recently talking about with ATG Cast, both with Around the Galaxy and Podcast of the Wheels. Star Wars fans talking about Star Wars. And I'm just going to even throw out a little bonus plug for Yubnub. They had a great episode that came out last Friday where they talk about Shadows of the Empire.
Wow.
And I'm blanking on their guest name, but he's a cast member at Saturday Night Live, but he loves Star Wars and all this stuff because no, I would remember Bobby.
But keep it in the box.
But anyhow, it's a great episode. So if you love Shadows of the Empire, the game, the book, the whatever, which I've never actually read the Shadows of the Empire book. I know all the stuff about the game. I know all the stuff about the whatever. But it's kind of one of those things that even though it doesn't fit anywhere now, I still want to go and read it just because it's pretty wild and like Shizor with the pheromones and all the different stuff.
My first Star Wars author interview for my website Echo Base was with Steve Perry, who is the author, not from Journey.
That guy's got pipes.
Steve Perry.
Not from Journey, but the other Steve Perry, who was the author of Shadows of the Empire. So
James Austin Johnson, it was their guest.
Okay,
James Austin Johnson. Yeah, one of the new cast members, James Austin Johnson. But like, it's really funny, but they also dig into, again, just Shadows of the Empire, which is one of those fun in between Star Wars things that doesn't really fit anywhere, but like carries a lot of weight because you get, you've got Kyle Katarn and you've got, all the different aspects of, not that Kyle Katarn, Josh Rendar, all the stuff that Shadows is. Yeah.
Yep.
Just there's so much fun stuff in there. So check that episode out. But this week, ATG Cast, Podcast of the Wheels, Tim Barnes, great fun conversation.
And if you're a patron, I think Tuesday night you'll be able to join us when we interview Jordan Hembrow, who was with us for Podathon.
And we may also have a Podcast of the Wheels recording this week also.
Oh, awesome. Excellent. Yep. Good. Great. Well, hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was a fun episode. We have a really exciting conclusion, 2-part finale coming up for Andor. I'm so excited for it. I can't wait for it. We're going to have a ton to talk about. I'm disappointed I won't be with you next week, but I will definitely be looking out for it. But as we say every week, Nick, may the Force be with you.
Always.
Just one more round, friend, then homeward bound, friend. Don't forget me in your dreams. Just one more song, friend, and then so long, friend. The nights get shorter, it seems. Just one more rhyme, friend. Yes, it's a crime, friend. But you know time, friend. Time can fly. So it's good night, friend. Good night, but not goodbye.